The LCR Crack Repair Kit is designed to repair cracks up to about 1/16 of an inch wide, 96 inches long, and 6 inches deep. The actual amount of resin and repair paste you'll need will depend on the depth and width of your crack. Each 10-ounce caulk tube contains approximately 18 cubic inches of low-viscosity epoxy resin. You may have the newer design of the LCR Crack Repair Kit. While the design may look a little different, the materials and repair process are unchanged. The kit includes the essential components needed to complete the repair: 2 tubes of LCR resin, 2 mixing plungers and 2 application nozzles, 2 tubs of epoxy repair paste, parts A and B, 7 injection ports, 2 disposable putty knives, 6 wooden mixing sticks, and 3 pairs of disposable latex-free gloves. Before beginning, it's important to keep in mind that preparation is critical for a successful repair. Make sure you've read through the instructions carefully, that you understand the working times of the materials, and that you have all tools and supplies ready before you start. The first step is inspection. Measure the crack's length and width. As a reference, a credit card is about 0.03 inches or 0.76 millimeters thick. If your crack is much thinner than that, like a hairline crack, it may be better suited for a non-injection repair method. Once you've inspected the crack, clear the workspace so you have full access, then scrape away any loose material until you have a solid concrete surface for adhesion. A wire brush, along with a vacuum or compressed air, can help remove loose particles from the crack. The crack should be free of debris, relatively dry, and the foundation stable. Now it's time to apply the epoxy repair paste and set the injection ports. First, lay out the port positions. Mark the first port 3 to 6 inches from the bottom of the crack, then space the remaining ports 8 to 12 inches apart along the length of the crack. When opening the epoxy repair paste, you may notice some material separation. This is completely normal and can be easily corrected by pre-mixing before dispensing using a separate mixing stick for each side. Start by mixing a small amount of the paste, just enough to coat the edges of the ports. Dispense equal parts of part A and part B onto a disposable mixing surface, like a piece of cardboard. Be sure not to use the same stick for both components, since the material will begin to cure as soon as the 2 parts come into contact. Mix thoroughly until the material is uniform and free of color streaks. You can use one of the supplied putty knives for mixing. Apply a small amount of paste around the edges of each port, being careful not to block the center hole. Align the port directly over the crack and press it firmly into place. Continue this process up the length of the crack and add a final port at the top to confirm resin penetration later. Let the paste tack up for at least 90 minutes or longer in cooler conditions. Once the ports are secured, mix enough paste to cover the crack. Apply at a thickness of about 1/8 of an inch, fully covering the edges of each port and extending at least 1 inch beyond both sides of the crack and around each port. Allow this paste to cure for at least 16 hours at 73 degrees Fahrenheit before continuing. After the paste is fully cured, you can begin resin injection. Be sure to wear disposable gloves and safety glasses. Start by checking the cartridge assembly. Make sure the red cap on the bottom is secure, then remove the small red cap at the top. Next, remove the tape wrapped around the cartridge. Insert the mixing plunger into the top opening. Hold the cartridge at the midpoint to keep the internal mixing wheel from moving, and thread the plunger clockwise until it stops. Then, while holding the cartridge firmly, pull the plunger sharply upward to rupture the foil barrier inside. If the foil doesn't break, the plunger may become difficult to move. If this happens, remove the plunger and carefully puncture the foil through the top of the cartridge using a wooden skewer or something similar. This ensures the resin mixes properly and helps prevent any leakage from the bottom. Once the foil is punctured, reattach the plunger and continue with the next step. Now, in order to mix the resin, pump the plunger with 20 to 30 full strokes until the resin reaches a uniform color. The resin has a working time of about 30 minutes once mixed. Once mixing is complete, press the plunger all the way down, squeeze the cartridge slightly to prevent the internal mixing wheel from spinning, then unscrew and remove the mixing plunger. Now screw the application nozzle onto the top of the cartridge. Remove the bottom red cap and insert the cartridge into a standard caulk gun. It's time to inject the resin. Start at the lowest port, insert the nozzle firmly, and apply steady pressure on the trigger. The resin will start filling the inside of the crack and work its way up. Once resin begins to flow out of the port above, remove the nozzle and cap the filled port. Move to the next one and repeat this process until all ports are filled. Be consistent and steady with pressure. Avoid forcing material too quickly. And discard any unused resin after 30 minutes or once it thickens. Once all ports have been filled, allow at least 24 hours for the resin to fully cure. When the resin has fully cured, each injection port can be snapped off. The resin within the port and crack will be fully hardened and sealed. If they don't come off easily, use a hammer or another suitable tool to carefully remove them. If a finished appearance is desired, use a heavy-duty scraper or an electric multi-tool with a scraper blade and carefully work along the crack to lift off the cured epoxy repair paste. Once removed, the surface will be smooth and ready for sanding, painting, or any finishing touches.